Well, I am so excited, you guys. I have a very, very special guest. I'm actually a little bit nervous interviewing him, even though I've known him for almost 10 years. So before we get started, I can see that you're online, but just maybe Heather or somebody just say that you can actually see both of us and hear both of us, because I know you're not going to want to miss one moment of this conversation. So we'll give it a second. Oh yeah, there's lots of people in line. So somebody just say, yes, can see us and hear us. Perfect. So welcome to Healthy Living Live. I'm Chef AJ, and my guest today is the best-selling author, the New York Times best-selling author of the book Eat to Live. And we're here today to discuss his new book, which is called Fast Food Genocide. I'm pretty sure he needs no introduction, but in case you just crawled out from under a rock, he is Dr. Joel Fuhrman. His website is his name, www.drfuhrman.com. And please welcome Dr. Joel Fuhrman. I am so excited to talk to you about this book.
Thank you. And I'm really excited to talk about it too, because I kind of feel that this is my most important book in my life. You know, I really think that if people all over America really read this, that it could change, it could have massive change of the way people act and behave, and could change society.
I might have to agree with you, Dr. Fuhrman, because while all your books are wonderful, my favorite book up until this book was Disease Proof Your Child. I first heard of you about 10 years ago with your book, Fasting and Eating for Health, which led me on my journey into True North, where I now have the privilege of working occasionally. But like you say, this book, this is for everybody. It's not just for vegans. This book is going to have mass appeal as far as I'm concerned. And while you guys are watching, go to www.amazon.com and pre-order the book, because if you pre-order the book, it will not only help Dr. Fuhrman get on the best-selling list, New York Times best-selling list, but he'll give you a chapter in advance. The book comes out next week. So let's all do a solid for Dr. Fuhrman, pre-order the book. And while you're watching this broadcast, you can actually be sharing it right now with everybody on your pages. So fast food genocide. Genocide's a pretty strong word, wouldn't you say?
I do. I think it's a strong word. And I think that, you know, people have to have a completely different idea of what food is doing to our country. They have no idea what's going on. You know, I think a lot of people out there understand that fast food, processed food, junk food, candy, soda leads to obesity, diabetes, heart attacks, strokes. But I don't think they recognize what's going on, that it decreases intelligence, that it causes criminal behavior, drug abuse, drug use, that it leads to mental illness, that it's destructive to people's futures and prevents them from coming out of poverty. I don't think they realize how much it fuels bigotry and racism. I don't think they see the food inequality and the poisoning going on of segments of our population, vulnerable people that whose lives are damaged. I don't think they recognize, just give you one example, I don't think people recognize that people who live in urban areas of this country that eat most of their calories from fast food and processed foods have 7 times the risk of developing a stroke before the age of 45. And so many hundreds of thousands of people are having strokes early in life, putting them in nursing homes, ruining their lives. So I don't think they see the full destruction that's really going on, and the fact that it affects the human genes so that it further damages your unborn offspring, even when you're not pregnant. In other words, the junk food you eat damages your genes to the point where now you have an abnormal baby with autism or heart defects or decreased intelligence or brain cancer. And you didn't know it was the junk food and fast food you ate when you were a kid that caused your baby to have these outcomes. So people are just seeing the tip of the iceberg, and they don't see the incredible negative effects that this junk food diet has on the American population. And we're living in a society and a time today where the majority of food eaten in America is processed food and fast food.
Do you know the numbers, Dr. Fuhrman, about how much processed food do people eat approximately?
Yes, it's close to 60% of the diet now. So it's more than eating regular food, is processed foods. And animal products is about 33%, so it's double the amount of animal products people are eating processed foods. And so, you know, which is worse? And it's like saying, why argue which is worse when you're putting things that are continually, when you're not getting the phytochemicals, the antioxidants, the micronutrients we need, when we're eating all animal products and processed foods, we know most likely that the sugars and the chemicals and the fried foods and these artificial sweeteners are likely the most brain damaging foods we can eat. and they're creating a vicious cycle of disease and poverty in our country.
You know, it's interesting because about 10 years ago, I wrote a book called Unprocessed, which I had the honor of you actually endorsing. And of course, I'm not a doctor, so it was not a scientific book, but I made the case that humans are not designed to eat processed food. But in your book, you gave the medical credence to everything I said in my book, scientifically, that it's not just that it makes us fat and sick, it's that it actually causes brain damage. And I love that you're saying those words, because people need to hear this, especially now with Halloween coming up, and people are just going to start feeding their kids crap. And they're going to continue to eat crap on Thanksgiving and Christmas, and it's just going to be one big crap fest.
Right. I'm very clear in saying the strong link between processed foods, fast food, junk food, and candy, and mental illness. Let's make this clear. It causes mental illness, and mental illness is a horrible thing. And let me give you one statistic. People who eat commercial baked goods like bagels and croissants and cookies, or fast food like French fries, 2 servings a week, 51% increased risk of developing depression. And it goes up from there in a dose-dependent manner. 3 servings, 4 servings, 5 servings, increases from 51% on up. One more statistic that's critical here. Children who eat candy, and that candy eating in childhood is linked to later life violence, drug use, and drug abuse more than any other parameter, more than not having a parent, more than having bad parenting, more than living in poverty, more than living in so in other words, more than any other feature looked at, the link between later life drug use is candy and sweets eating in childhood. And the people that are incarcerated in federal prisons, the majority of people incarcerated in federal prisons today are people who are there for non-violent related drug use, drug abuse, and drug use offenses. So the people get addicted to drugs, they get put in prison, you get families destroyed, and their mentality and their intellect and their ability to pull themselves out of their bad circumstances life is diminished because of the exposure to fast food and processed foods. So we have a vicious cycle going on, and people have no idea. And then we have Halloween, and people are celebrating, creating damage to our children's brains and predisposing them to addictions in later life. It's just an insane society.
You know, I once volunteered in a woman's prison doing a pet program, and the crap that they feed. It's funny that the people that could benefit most from good nutrition, children, the elderly, incarcerated, they seem to get the absolute worst food possible. And somebody on the feed, Dr. Fuhrman Fab, says, do you include processed vegan foods? Of course. Crap is crap, whether it's, from an animal or not.
I said earlier that the vegan foods are probably the most dangerous foods, more than the animal products are. In other words, we're saying is French fries in a commercial food establishment, you're cooking a potato in oil that's been reheated over and over again for hours, and it forms rancidity and carcinogenic and mutagenic and compounds. So we're talking here about very, very dangerous. The link between 1 serving of French fries a week and breast cancer is 1 serving a week increases risk of breast cancer later on in life by 27%. So we're talking here about tremendous ability of these foods to cause cancer. It's because of the way the foods are prepared. They're grilled, they're fried, they're deep fried, they're sweetened. So there's a lot of chemicals involved, a lot of factors involved with what makes these foods exceedingly dangerous.
It's interesting because in your book and right now you're talking about the link between eating these foods and cancer. And once a week I volunteer at a cancer hospital. And all the doctors there say that the people's diets have nothing to do with their cancer. And while they're getting their infusions, they come around with their lunch card. It's usually either a ham and cheese sandwich or a turkey sandwich on white bread with mayo, chips, and a soda. But, they said, well, if my diet had anything to do with this, my doctor would have told me.
Well, it's unfortunate, but obviously we can't rely on doctors to be nutritional experts. They don't really learn it, we shouldn't expect it. I was giving a lecture 2 days ago, the day before yesterday, and one of the questions from the audience was, how can we get the medical profession to learn more about nutrition, or how can we get them to do this? And my answer was, why do we want that? Why do we expect that? Why are people so focused on doctors being nutritional experts? That's not what their specialty is. It's not what their knowledge base is in. And doctors just aren't nutrition. It doesn't matter if they're nutritional experts or not. It should be taught in. So my point of this book and my point of my message is that this should be reading, writing, and arithmetic. and nutritional science taught in grade school to all the population, not just physicians. You can't go to a 10-minute doctor visit and expect him to teach you what should have taken you years and years of study to learn, because the one most critical thing that affects your health, your destiny, your intelligence, your dementia, your happiness, your mental attitude, everything is affected by the food you put in your life. And you expect your doctor to transmit that in a 5 or 10-minute visit? They're pharmacology experts. They're not nutritional experts. Don't expect them to be a nutritional expert. It's not what doctors do. So.
People are loving what you say. If you just joined us, I'm interviewing Dr. Joel Fuhrman, the New York Times bestselling author of Eat to Live, on his new book, Fast Food Genocide. You can pre-order it right now at Amazon.com and get a preview chapter. And if you're watching this live feed, please share it right now. So, Dr. Fuhrman, in your book, the chapter on the brain, you say, the brain is a living organ that is exquisitely dependent on nutrients, and even small amounts of unnatural foods early in life can wreak havoc on this nutrient-sensitive organ. The damage becomes incrementally worse as we consume these foods in greater amounts. So a little bit's okay, right? A little bit.
Well, we're talking here about the fact that moderation is whatever a person chooses to do, and that a little bit can lead to problems. I just mentioned earlier that one serving of commercial French fries a week increases breast cancer risks by 26%, and 2 servings of commercial baked goods, even a bagel or a cookie, increases risk of depression by 51%. So we're talking about when these foods are exceedingly dangerous, that you have almost all Americans taking high risk of developing mental illness, cancer, depression, and heart disease and strokes and dementia. So the brain, saying the brain is a sensitive organ, meaning that the loss of brain cells and the loss of intelligence begins when we're very young in life. The loss of ability to concentrate in school, the loss of mathematical skills, the loss of reasoning skills, of logical skills, of creativity. And all this is lost when we're exposed to these foods as childhood, and we're dumbing down our population. And what makes this so, how should I say, it makes this even worse is because we have a very unfair food distribution system. And we put people in certain areas of the country, and I go through the history of this in the book, of how this happens, of how after the Civil War, when Black Americans were freed, how they had more centenarians. That means more Black Americans, newly freed slaves, lived to be 100 years old than the white Americans did. They didn't have bad health. This is the bigotry that's going on, seeing that as doctors we learn, in the Black population, they have so much more heart attack and diabetes and obesity and dementia and prostate cancer. But that wasn't always the case. They're not genetically defective or inferior. So I'm showing them in the book that there's no inferiority, medical or inferiority or intellectual inferiority, and that wasn't occurring. It's really it's the Jim Crow laws that came, and the segregating of blacks in the inner cities in the North, the lack of food distributions, the convenience stores, the fast food industry. That we took foods that were made during the war times of World War I and World War II, the Tang, the Spam, the Twinkies, the concentrated calories, the sodas. We put them into the inner cities. We made these foods cheap. We made them addictive, and we're feeding whole populations on them, and we've destroyed populations. And then we blame those populations on the effects of the foods that have been that are placed in their environment. So it's a very sad situation, and that's why I'm on such a mission that I think that this information is so important. It's so important for equality, because don't we all as Americans believe in equal, equal opportunity for everybody to be happy and realize the American dream, and to have equality and equal opportunity means we have to have equal food opportunity and equal food exposure. So we have to combine the education about how important this is to eat right with the availability of food to make it so people can have it in their environment and it's affordable and they know how important it is to eat it. When we put those things together, we can lift our population, and we can lift the most vulnerable members of our population to be able to have a happy and successful life.
Yeah. I actually heard David Carter, who's known as the 300-pound. He's a football player, talked about how unfair this advantage is, the way these foods are skewed. And they can use food stamps to buy, Twinkies and Ho-Hos, but God forbid they should buy a potato. That's not allowed, with food stamps. Heather is asking a great question online. She says, if we've already damaged ourselves with these poisons, can we undo the damage, or are we doomed? You talked about in that book that your goose is never fully cooked. I loved your sense of humor shining through.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate, but the body is a miraculous self-healing machine. There's amazingly things the body has to repair itself. And we can fix so much of the damage, but we can't fix all of the damage. So just think about this. If you smoked cigarettes for 30 years and then you quit smoking, would all the damage from smoking be gone? No, but every year you're off cigarettes that goes by, your risk of developing lung cancer or something serious from that cigarette smoking will be reduced. It'll never go down to zero because you still smoke for 30 years. But if you smoke for only 5 years, the risk will be much less. And if you smoked only 1 pack a day for 5 years and not 3 packs a day for 5 years, the damage will be even less. So of course it's proportional to the amount of years and to the extent of that, the level of bad foods you ate. But right. It's never too late. If you're living and you're still alive, why not have a better mental attitude? Why not feel better? Why not increase your lifespan, increase your healthy life expectancy? But what this information gives people, it gives them an unprecedented opportunity in human history because we know so much about modern nutritional science. It gives people the power to control their health destiny. And now we can be centenarians. We can live to be 100 years old in great health. And we have to put on the oxygen mask on ourselves first, be living examples of great health, and then be able to have impactful messaging to other people because we've taken great care of ourselves. And we can have so much of an effect that, the healthcare crisis, the mental illness, the growing industry of people going into nursing homes and able to care for themselves. Of all ages, we're talking about the most growing industry in America is nursing homes caring for people under the age of 65. Younger people having strokes. We're seeing teenagers having strokes today because of the influence of fast food. And I should say, because I haven't said it yet, that fast food is not just the food purchased at fast food restaurants. It's anything out of a bag or a box or a with wrapper on it. It's anything that can be eaten fast, that's already pre-made and pre-designed. It can be digested fast. It's absorbed into the bloodstream fast. It's overly seasoned and spiced. It has chemical and it has contamination in its ingredients in it. And of course, it's soda. It's cookies. It's foods made with white flour. It's anything that uses these sweeteners. And I even consider honey and maple syrup damaging foods as well.
Yep. Well, you say in your book right here, you say fast food has 6 characteristics. It is digested and absorbed rapidly. It contains multiple synthetic ingredients. It is calorically dense. It is nutritionally barren. It is highly flavored. It contains excess salt and sugar. And one thing you said that I didn't know that I found.
I agree with that guy.
You said I knew about dopamine because I learned at True North from Dr. Goldhammer that the more calorically concentrated the calories in the food we eat, the more dopamine is released, this pleasurable neurotransmitter. But one thing you said here that I didn't know and I found fascinating was that the faster the calories of a food enter the bloodstream, the higher the release of fat storage hormones and the greater the increase in dopamine, a driver of addiction in the brain. I did not know that. That was really interesting, actually.
That's right. And that's where I notice some people listening to us are putting up on their message board, they're saying, what about raw honey? What about, maple syrup too? Those comes from a tree. But it's the same reason when these concentrated calories rush into the bloodstream in 3 to 5 minutes. It's just the amount of glucose that flooded the blood into the bloodstream so quickly. When so much sugar enters the bloodstream in such a short period of time, the body has to respond with a huge amount of insulin. And insulin is a fat storage hormone. Insulin is it drives cellular replication. It drives cancer. It drives fat deposition. And it's proangiogenesis, means it promotes the growth of blood vessels that fuels cancer. So we're talking here about, it's just one alternative myth after another where people consider some as the most dangerous foods. They consider them health foods.
Right. And the ones we're feeding to our children, Amanda says it's hard to stay away from these foods. They're everywhere. Yeah, that's true. They're readily available, easily affordable, socially acceptable. Do you think the processed food industry will ever be held accountable for the disease they are creating and have created, much in the same way that the tobacco industry finally was held accountable?
I don't know what you mean by held accountable.
People were able to sue the tobacco industry for their longevity. Because because they didn't know, at least at the beginning, at a certain point, the Surgeon General put a warning package on cigarettes. But when cigarettes first became very popular, the movie stars of the 40s were smoking, no one knew that smoking was dangerous. Even people's doctors smoked and often recommended it to their patients. So a lot of people were able to file lawsuits that got lung cancer to the tobacco industry. And I'm just wondering if we could just, you and me, start a class action lawsuit against the processed food industry for creating all this disease.
Well, I don't know about that, but the NAACP and some of these people came to me, and I was lecturing in churches in the inner cities, and I was and contrary to the ivory towers of America that says these people aren't going to change what they do or they're not going to accept this message is none true. They see the terrible tragedies happening all around. They're hungry for this message. But the point I'm making right now is, I was commissioned, or I asked to put a book together, and I put this book together to include a lot of information, maybe, and I want it to be a textbook to include information people have, and then other people can do things. They can write a smaller version. They could write one for little kids. They can sue people out of it. They can take information and do something else with it. In other words, this book houses a lot of information people need to know to get the ball rolling. And then whatever you want to do to take it further, and I'm advocating that the teachers teach it in school, and that educators and celebrities and politicians and athletes and all across America, PTA groups, we use this book as a starting point for discussions, for meetings. And in my local area where I live in New Jersey, parents are not allowed to bring sweets and candy and cupcakes and donuts to school on their kid's birthday. They're not allowed to bring junk food to the soccer games. But across America, this is going on all over the place. We have to start somewhere. And the point is, when you have the right information, it becomes easier for people to make the right start. Wherever they start, they're doing something that's going to change, to help change, facilitate change.
So many people I know have kids with ADHD, hyperactivity, they're on medicine, autism. You say that any junk food eaten during the formative preschool years is associated with these conditions.
Right, and we also making this clear that I'm not writing my own personal feelings or opinions here. I'm a reporter, and I'm collecting the evidence from the scientific literature and having it all in one place so people can access this information and be able to understand what's going on. And also showing it in a historical viewpoint, historically, the history of food in America and how damaging this has been on our world's population, because we've spread this message of fast food to other countries. And then we've spread diabetes, and we spread breast cancer, and we spread dementia, and we spread strokes. And now we have a whole world that's addicted to, that's where we're destroying our population, we're destroying our environment, we're destroying our climate, everything's, and we have to change our society. And food is a great place to start in these changes that have to occur.
You're right about spreading it to other countries. Like in Asia, they never were overweight. They used to have the lowest obesity rate. When I was in Japan, it was 1994, and everything I saw was McDonald's, KFC, Baskin Robbins. And I think the more other countries want to emulate us, the fatter and sicker they'll be like us, so it's crazy. On page 60, you say the fact that early childhood nutrition can have lifelong consequences indicates that nutrients affect the expression of genes that govern brain development. So is it true that it's more dangerous to feed these foods to children than it is, say, if you and I were to eat a cupcake?
Well, when you and I eat a cupcake, it'll increase the risk of depression. But when a child eats a cupcake, it not only decreases their intelligence, but it damages their genes, because in the child lives the eggs of their children. You and I already had our children, or we're past the age where we're going to have more kids at this point. So when we eat something bad, we're not damaging the sperm of our eggs that we're going to feed to future generations. When you eat unhealthy foods in your childhood, you're damaging your future children. When you eat these foods before you give birth, that means when you're 5 years old, your eggs for your future children are there already being damaged, and you could have a kid with autism or with a brain tumor because of the junk food you ate in the first 5 years of your life. So you've actually damaged. And we know that the excess animal protein fed to children can shorten their own lifespan, but it can also shorten the lifespan of their children and their grandchildren. Did you hear what I just said? That what you eat in the first 5 years of life can shorten the lifespan of your grandchildren as well? This is why it's called fast food genocide. You're talking about restricting your generations to come. When you have people, this is a very interesting concept, may not be so much relevant for most people, but when you overeat on animal protein, because then you're a predator, not prey animal. You're a predator like a lion or a tiger. Now, because if you're a cat that is eating rabbits, if the cat eats all the rabbits, the rabbits die out, and there's no more rabbits for the cat to eat. So the cats die out too. The lynx don't live if there's no more Arctic hares. So nature built a system in, whereas when the cats overeat calories, especially animal protein, muscle, it drives up hormones that shorten their lives. But that's not enough, because the rabbits won't grow back and repopulate themselves if their population has been decimated. So the body damages its own genes. So your offspring from multiple generations get their lifespan shortened, so the rabbits can come back and propagate and not become extinct. So we have a whole process of science going on where we're damaging the future generations by us eating unhealthy.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Fuhrman. If you're just joining us, I'm talking to Dr. Joel Fuhrman, author of the soon-to-be-released Fast Food Genocide, which you can pre-order on Amazon right now. That will really help him to get this important message out and have this book also become a New York Times bestseller like Eat to Live. And speaking of Eat to Live, so many people are saying that it was that book that started them on their health journey. So I believe you. A lot of people are going to believe you in this book. So the question I'm getting from the parents is, okay, so now that we know this, what do we do? Our kids are already addicted. Some of them are older and resistant to change. It's different if the kid hasn't been born or is 2 or 3, but when they're, when they drive and still live with you, how do we get our families to be on board with this? Especially if we have a spouse that isn't eating this way. That seems to come up a lot, these conflicts.
Right. Well, that's why I spend so much time writing books. That's, because we have to read and study. We have to become students of health, and we have to become experts in health. So I think that I want people to be able to articulate these concepts and explain them to others, and then become the role model for other people in their family and their environment. So nobody can change their child unless they change first. When a parent brings their child to see me when they're not eating right or have some problem, I say to the child, I need to enlist your help to get your parents to eat healthier, because they're addicted to these foods. And you won't believe it, in the schools, the kids, they absorb this information when they're taught it. They love it. They get excited by it. It's the parents that complain and are resistant, not the kids. So the question isn't really how do you get the kids to do it. The question is, how do you get the parents to do it? How do you get the parents to love it, and because you can make great tasting desserts that you could taste just as better. Kids love that. Kids love to cook. They love to grow foods, they love to see things growing. They love to be part of making. They understand the concept that you are what you eat, and not as addicted as the parents are. So it's really not a child problem. It's really a societal problem. So it has to be addressed on all these different levels of society simultaneously. Right.
Well, so I agree. It is the parents, because if the parents eat healthfully, like Sharon McRae, who's watching this broadcast right now, the kids eat healthfully too. So it comes from the top down. Right. So does feeding children, in your opinion, these fast and processed foods from an early age set them up for a struggle with processed food addiction and cravings later in life? And if so, how?
Right. So the book is a lot about that. The book talks about how these foods are designed to create addiction and cravings for them. So you create addictions and cravings for them, but also it affects the primitive part of the brain, and which decreases your, decreases your intelligence and decreases your ability to logically and put the effort in to get out of your addiction. So it makes it harder to quit smoke. When you eat junk food, it's harder to quit smoking. It's harder to quit alcohol. It's harder to get off drugs when you're addicted to drugs, and it's harder to quit eating the junk food as well, because you get the drive to eat those foods, but then it takes away your ability to fight against the addiction. So that means you have to cold turkey the junk food, because within a few weeks you start to gain back the ability to fight the addiction, and it's painful for people. The first week after they stop sweets is very addicting. Many people have said that was harder to get off sweets than it was quitting smoking. It was harder to get off sweets than it was to get off opiates. It's very hard for people to get off their sugar and their oil and their fried oils and fried foods. Yeah.
And yet so many, I know you said doctors aren't supposed to really be the ones we go to for nutrition, but so many doctors, and even those in the plant-based movement that we're both a part of, think that there's no such thing as food addiction or sugar addiction, that it's, when you have it, it's real. And I had it for sure.
Well, one of my strongest contributions to the field of nutritional science is showing that as people improve the nutritional density of their diet, and a diet with a higher nutritional quality, their cravings were diminished, their addictions lessened, and their desire to overeat went down. So what I'm saying is that I've published a study in a nutrition journal, in a medical journal, showing that as the people improved the quality of their diet, they were able to better control the quantity and and their addictions weakened and have a chance to beat the addiction. Without a focus on nutritional quality, it's very hard to cut back willy-nilly on calories because you get an overwhelming desire to eat more food, and you feel too fatigued and weak and shaky if you don't keep putting extra calories in your mouth. If you have to eat a higher quality diet so you don't feel shaky and weak and fatigued when you're not eating food all the time. So people don't feel comfortable and then when they're not digesting, and then if they're forced to overeat. So there's a lot of factors going on. And I think that by putting all these pieces of the puzzle together and having people understand all these various pieces of the puzzle, it removes the obstacle to change. And it makes it easier for them to get rid of their addictions and to stay with a healthy diet and achieve permanent benefits they can live with for the rest of their life.
So Martine, who's watching the feed, wants to know what you're going to hand out at your house at Halloween.
Well, for years and years at Halloween, we've always been handing out, what are these things? These light up necklaces.
Like
glow in the dark necklaces, bouncy balls, yo-yos, some kind of small toy that we buy at, I think it's Oriental Trading.
Oriental Trader, yeah.
Yeah, so we buy something that we give out, some gifts we give out to the door. We never give out food or candy or anything like that. Matter of fact, when they come to the door and I give them the toy, they really come to my house. They love that because they love getting what they're getting. I always tell them about the bad effects of what they have in their bag. When they come there, I say, this is good, but I said, and I tell them, that the link between candy and it makes you less intelligent, and it makes you depressed, and it causes cancer. Just want you to know that before you eat all that candy.
I would love to trick or treat at your house. You know what would be great to give everybody that comes to your house this year? This, if there was a way to do that, I think this would be the perfect thing to go into the Halloween bag.
Not enough people come to my house. It wouldn't.
So what some of the parents are asking, they can control their houses, what they do. If they're good parents, I think they would, and they would also eat this way. But extracurricular activities, like you say, the Krispy Kreme donuts at soccer games, and a lot of parents feel that, well, they don't want their children to feel different or deprived. And
that's a good way of thinking. You don't want your kids to feel deprived or different, so just let them all smoke cigarettes or snort cocaine. Or tell someone, if everybody else is snorting cocaine, they don't want to feel deprived. They should snort cocaine too. Everybody else. That's a great way of parenting kids, right? You don't want to feel deprived, so they just should give everything that they want that's bad. That's the most ridiculous concept I've ever heard in my life. Matter of fact, when my daughter Kara was 4 years old, she said to me, because she was at a health club, it's called a boot camp, and she called it a boo-boo camp. She said, don't these parents love their children? And I said, what do you mean, Kara? She said, they're all eating junk food and like chips and stuff. And I said, yeah, but they don't know that it damages the body and the brain. And she said, they don't know that what you eat makes your body. How could they be so stupid? I said, they're not that stupid. Everybody does it, so it's just like normal. My kids could never figure out why parents didn't care about their kids and didn't love their kids. So it's the opposite. It's a parent that loves their children, spends time with their children. Your children wants your time. They want your love. They want you to have fun with them. They want you to play with them, and they want you to teach them. And they want to learn from you if you give them the time and you give them that love and you give them that attention and you play with them. If you don't play with them, if you don't have fun with them, if you don't do things with them, you can't just order them around and tell them what to do. That's not going to work. My kids saw this as a gift of love. They become little shining rays of light to spread a message of good health to other people because they saw this, because they see it as love for their friends. And they spread it to their friends. And you know what I mean? So they see this as a source of love and goodwill for others. It's not something you feel bad about. You feel good about it.
It's funny. Your story is very similar to one that Dr. Ellen Goldhammer tells about his son Gar when he got called into the principal's office because one of his classmates was eating a bologna sandwich, and he said, "Your parents don't love you," and he got called to the principal's office. This just a little aside. Is it true that you were one of the first or the first interns at the True North Health Center many years ago when they opened?
I have no idea. No, they were open for years, and they had interns before me. I don't know if no, I don't think I was one of the first. It's been going on a long time, but fasting has been going on in this country since the 1920s. And so, but no, I wasn't one of the first interns, but of course, I was at True North Health Center when I was still a medical student as part of my medical rotations.
Oh.
And I got credit from my medical school for being there.
Nice.
So you have certain electives you could choose. So I was able to choose to do an elective there, which is great. And now, and subsequently in years to come, I've had many medical students do their electives studying under me, and many medical. So that's a good thing, is that medical students at least have the option of taking some elective things like that. Where
did you acquire this intense passion for this? Because you really are, in a way, a lone warrior out there, in a lot of ways.
I think so. And, so many people are so confused about nutrition and have like belief systems and rigid ways of thinking in both the paleo community and the vegan community. They all have their little gurus, and they really are not, how should I say, well-versed with the science that's out there and what the cumulative and preponderance of evidence shows, and they make the decisions based on, bad information. So, so I'm very passionate about this because I really know the potential of where we could go with this. And I think that the nutritional science community has been nudged in the correct direction. And 90% of nutritional scientists have moved closer, much closer, and are almost all the way there. I know that we're getting over that hump. And when that happens, look at what happened with the World Health Organization. The declaration that the World Health Organization has made in the years about eating more plant food and eating more fruits and vegetables, and classifying barbecued and processed meats as a class 1 carcinogen. And so the same as asbestos and cigarette smoking. So progress has been made, and it will continue to be made.
Right. Well, I love that you give the message that of both not eating processed food and not eating animal products. Like you said, we have so many of these paleo doctors that just say, well, sugar's the problem, but eat as much oil and animal products and even dairy as you want. And then we have some of the doctors saying, well, no, just don't eat animals. But, if you want to have a little sugar, oil, salt, flour.
Sugar, white flour, white rice, that's all okay food, and they put in, and so they could put maple syrup and honey and salt and white, and still people feel junk food. And then they're shocked when people get depressed or have problems develop, so it's real. Really, and that's what I see all the time. It's like one extreme or the other. You have to be a equal opportunity employer of negativity.
Yeah. And like you said earlier about the unfair advantage with minorities, processed food is an equal opportunity destroyer, Yeah. So Carol mentions that the preview chapter will knock your socks off, and it will. And what we're talking about, the preview chapter on the brain, is this book is coming out next week, but if you pre-order it right now on Amazon, you'll not only help Dr. Fuhrman get this book to hopefully be a New York Times bestseller like Eat to Live was, but you will get the chapter that she's talking about. So this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so we'll switch a little bit from the destruction that's going to happen to our children and our children's children from eating processed food. But what role do you believe that processed and fast foods play in the promotion of breast and prostate cancers? And can someone who has been newly diagnosed with breast cancer significantly increase her chances of remission and survival by eliminating processed foods with or without conventional medical treatment?
Well, thank you for that question. And it gives me an opportunity to state that as president of the Nutritional Research Foundation, we've fundraised for and began a study called the Nutritarian Women's Health Study, whose headquarters is at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff, Arizona. We have over 2,000 women already enrolled in this study. We're hoping to enroll more than 5,000 women who are pledging to eat a breast cancer preventative diet. And we teach them what that is. They're monitored with special blood tests, when they're kept on track with information. And the bottom line is this, is that we're enrolling not just all women of all ages, we're also women who have early stage breast cancer, women who have breast cancer, showing that breast cancer can be reversed, can be prevented and reversed. And the data shows that the same diet style that prevents breast cancer makes women live longer and prevent recurrence in women who have breast cancer. Just give you an example. A study on women who have breast cancer followed for 10 years, and they tracked how many lignans they ate. Now, lignans are in pineapple stem and broccoli stems and sesame seeds and flax seeds and chia seeds. And the women who ate 1/3 of a milligram of lignan a day on the average had a 71% decreased risk of dying of breast cancer over that 10-year period. That's incredible. And they only ate 1/3 of a milligram of lignan. Now, flax seeds have the most lignans, and a tablespoon has 21 milligrams of lignin, and these women only ate a third of a milligram. Imagine if they ate 10 milligrams of lignin, or just 5 milligrams of lignin, just a teaspoon a day, and they only had a third of a milligram. Well, what if they started before they got cancer? It would be even more effective. We're saying the same thing with cruciferous green vegetables. When you give cruciferous green vegetables to women who have cancer, the risk of developing recurrence or death from cancer goes down to more than 50%. So we're talking about looking at every one of these G-bombs, or every one of these individual features: greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, seeds, flax seeds, cooked mushrooms, raw cruciferous vegetables, right? Cooked beans. All these things individually have been shown to decrease the recurrence rate and death of breast cancer. But what if we put together a portfolio, a diet with a full portfolio of all these foods that have been shown to protect against breast cancer death and to prevent recurrence of breast cancer, and we put it all into one program, and we keep that program so it's mildly, so we prevent caloric excess, and we keep it high in nutrients, and we make sure we have all the participants have a broad spectrum of all the nutrients humans need without being deficient in any one nutrient. Then we have the opportunity to give people the full opportunity to get well. And we're seeing breast cancer reverse itself, and we're seeing women who are told they got, I have plenty of, obviously, I've been in practice for almost 27, 28 years now, a long time. And what I'm saying right now is, over those years, I've had many patients with breast cancer and prostate cancer and lymphoma and leukemia who've reversed their diseases and come back to normal. And it's whether it's my sister-in-law, or whether it's a woman with lymphoma who's reversed her cancer, whether it's a man with no longer with prostate cancer, whether it's a woman who had metastatic breast cancer to her bones that resolved, whether it's another woman who had ovarian cancer metastasized with fluid in her lung who's now alive, doing well 17 years later. I'm not making I'm not making claims, but I'm saying that the facts are you can't take away people's hope, and you never know the effects of nutritional excellence could have on the body, even when a person is sick.
Right. Well, I think one of the very first things I've ever heard of yours was you actually have a CD called Nutritional Excellence. And that's where I learned so much of what I teach now, because you're really one of the only ones, other than maybe Dr. Goldhammer and maybe Dr. Esselstyn, that really is promoting eating a lot of vegetables, especially grains, for health. And I appreciate that, because I teach the same thing. So Lavanda's asking, what about coconut syrup? And I know what you're going to say, because sugar is sugar. Because on page 47 of your book, you say that excess sugar impairs both our cognitive skills and our self-control. That is, having a little sugar stimulates a hard-to-resist craving for more. The mixture of sugar, salt, and oil derails the ability of the body to control calories or be satisfied with normal amounts of food. Fast foods create human eating machines, that is, individuals with no caloric turnoff switch. So does that mean if we eat these SOS-laden foods, that it literally turns off our hunger and satiety signals? We never get full.
You always want to eat more food. So let me just say one more thing here, in that when we're saying sugar, the only sweets we should eat is fresh fruit and a limited amount of dried fruit.
Right.
So we're talking here, if I'm making a special, I might put 1 date per serving or something, or a tablespoon of raisins in my oatmeal in the morning. But the point I'm making is that our sweet tooth is there because we're designed as humans and primates to want to eat fresh fruit. It's not there for us eating, and our desire for fat and our desire to eat more calorically concentrated should be limited to eating nuts and seeds, not oils. Oils are a processed food, and sugar is not the same thing as eating a mango or a berry. And here's the one important feature, is when you eat cooked beans and cooked mushrooms, 2 cooked foods, cooked greens and 2 mushrooms, and you eat 2 raw foods, raw greens and raw onion or scallion. That's 4 foods. 2 cooked, 2 raw. When you eat those 4 foods in your regular diet, you thicken the biofilm that's adherent to the lining of the villi, and it makes it harder for glucose to pass through the biofilm, lowering the glycemic effect of everything else you eat. What I'm saying right now is, when you have that mango for breakfast, the glycemic effect of that mango has been reduced because you regularly eat beans and greens and mushrooms and onions, and your biofilm is thickened. So when you eat, so now the glycemic effect of the fruit you're eating is much lower because you're regularly eating the right vegetables and beans and mushrooms and things like that. So the overall glycemic effect is less.
I agree with you. I'm not a fan of any kind of sugar except for fruit. I always say eat the fruit, the whole fruit, and nothing but the whole fruit. So help you God. So on page 45, you talk a lot about learning difficulties and depression, and you say that clinical depression is the top cause of disability for children age 5 and older, and that as many as 1 in 8 adolescents is diagnosed as clinically depressed. Some have milder forms of mood disorders and learning disabilities. A country now that just antidepressants are just, they're given out like candy. Do you think the dietary intervention should be used as the first line of treatment? And could people, especially children, realistically expect to come off their psychiatric medications or reduce them by eliminating processed foods?
Oh, of course. And keep in mind when you just said that 1 in 8 women depression or children get that clinical diagnosis. I'm getting an echo right now.
It's okay. I'm still praying to the technology, guys. So let's keep. We're doing good.
So what I'm saying right now is that there's a lot of milder forms of depression, milder forms of it. And so we're seeing a lot of everybody's with it. So we're no longer. It's hard for me.
Yeah, no, I understand. And we've been doing great up until now. And how to troubleshoot this, I don't know. And if we have to end, we have to end because we've done about 45 minutes and it's been brilliant. So keep talking a little bit. And if it gets annoying, we'll see.
Yes, there. Let me see that.
Maybe turn your sound, maybe turn your volume down a little bit. See if that helps.
I don't know if that's going to help. Does that help?
Shh, Bailey. Let me hear you, Doc. Talk
Testing
again.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Right now it's good. I think it's because my dog started barking.
I'll put my headphones on. Not good on mine. I'm still going to maybe that'll reduce echo.
Okay. Thanks, guys, for bearing with us. And guys, remember to please pre-order this on Amazon right now. Get your free chapter in advance on the brain. And if you can share this broadcast right now. Let's hear you.
I don't think it's better.
Do you guys think it's better? It sounds okay to me. And sometimes it actually sounds okay in the replay.
All right.
Could somebody type? Keep talking. I mean, we can always.
Well, look. Here's the thing.
I can hear you perfectly.
Good. Is that people don't have to be sick. They don't have to get demented when they get older. We have the information. Millions of people. And we need people to learn about this and become experts in this science. So we have to educate. Our population. And that's the starting point. Yeah, there's too much feedback.
Okay, well, that's okay. So, because there was only one more question. It was about Alzheimer's, and I'm pretty sure that what you were going to say is that what we eat in our life from even pre-birth matters. And guess what? If you want to know more about it, you're going to have to just get this wonderful book, Fast Food Genocide, at Amazon. Pre-order it. You get a chapter. So, Dr. Fuhrman, my sound seems to be okay. So what I'd like to end with is my favorite quote from your book, if you don't mind. It's on page 62. And here's what you say. The amount of scientific evidence is irrefutable that junk food, candy, soft drinks, fast food, and commercial baked goods damage the brain. Unfortunately, well-meaning parents and grandparents are the biggest culprits, poisoning the health and future intellect of the nation's children. Children don't shop and buy their own food. Adults reward children with donuts and chips for playing well in sports. Adults support their children's Halloween candy collections. Adults make holiday cookies and cakes. Adults take their children on fast food excursions. Lots of traditional American practices and social norms damage the brains of our precious children. It is time to change this, especially because the right food choices lead to higher intelligence, emotional stability, and happiness. This is a great book, you guys. Please order it now. If you're going to get it, why not help Dr. Fuhrman's book become a bestseller by pre-ordering it on Amazon right now? You'll get an advanced chapter, and please share this broadcast with everyone. Dr. Fuhrman, I love your work. I love this book. I think it is my favorite of all yours, Fast Food Genocide. Thank you guys so much for watching. I think the sound glitch was only the end.
You have to go to my website to get the advanced chapter.
Go to drfuhrman.com.
drfuhrman.com/FMK.
Okay, fantastic. And thanks all of you for watching Healthy Living. I'm Chef AJ, and I make healthy taste delicious. Okay, you can hang on for just 1 second, Dr.